What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and welcome to my metal build for Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. Now, similar to the other builds, this is a starter build, meaning you can put this together on your first playthrough using gear from the various followers. Metal actually has some pretty crazy grace builds that you can do in New Game Plus, but even then, I think Metal is something that definitely gets stronger the more you play. Early on, Metal is, I don't want to say it's weaker than the other builds, but there is a lot of stuff with Metal where it becomes stronger as you get more and more levels, mainly because the starter Metal set requires a pretty significant stat investment to really get going. But once it does get going, man, Metal is like a full train that does not stop. It's able of just doing like silly amounts of damage. You're able to just poison stuff and watch it die. like this thing, like, oh, maybe you should just stay away from me and slowly lose your health. And then we can put down something like this, and now it's inflicted with ice. Like you truly do become like the master of ailments, which is one of the things I like a lot about Metal. We're able to do a lot of manipulation to spirit, and we're able to essentially like lock enemies down and make it so that they really struggle a lot to fight back against what we're doing here. You know, you'll notice that we have Toxin on this guy, we now have Ice on this guy, and we're gonna also get Earth up on top of them. And this enemy is resistant to Earth, but it's like we don't care. We're gonna either he's gonna die or we're gonna get it on top of him. And that's one of the things I like a lot about this is you're just enemies are just getting knocked down. Just look at the amount of icons that we are steadily stacking up on this thing. Pretty silly. Oh, and on top of that, we have one of the more devastating martial arts. If we can get Earth on you, since you're already Earth aligned, let's find out. No, that's not gonna work. That's okay. Gonna be dead before we get anything else applied to him. But yeah, pretty easy there. I mean, even the enemies that we were more resistant against, the fire type enemies, they still just dropped. Didn't matter. And that's one of the things I like a lot about this build is this is probably the closest we have to a multi-element build in the game. And like I said, it does take a little bit more investment, so I think it's more mid-game build that it starts to come into its own, but it's definitely a rewarding play style. And I think it's important because, you know, early on at least Metal seems weaker, and it's important to know that it's not. It takes a little bit of while to get going, you know? It has less acceleration but higher top speed. Think of it that way. But either way, let's talk about the build. So obviously, once you get things going, you're up to 150. Our three stats are going to be Earth, Water, and Metal. Metal's going to go all the way up to 99. Earth Virtue, we got to get up to 31 to get B Agility, and then Water is our secondary, and that's going to go up to 22. Now, since it's going to be harder to do this early on, once we get to the armor, I'd suggest leaving the chest off the armor, and that should allow you to get by with your Earth Virtue being at roughly 15, which is what you're going to want to do early on with this build until you have more stats to allocate. Once you have roughly 60 stat points, you'd be around 31 here and probably 30 to 40 here, and that's when you're going to really kind of get the ball rolling, but it's going to take a minute. This, like I said, more of a mid-ish game build. Moving on to wizardry spells. Once you unlock it, Venom Snare is your bread and butter. There's no other Venom spell that compares to it. This is obviously unlocked towards the end of the game. So the alternatives to this, and this is going to come down to preference, but either Devouring Sweep or Toxin Bubbles. I ended up using Toxin Bubbles a lot, and I like that it's a set and forget. Devouring Sweep, if you have an enemy slowed and you can get behind them, this moves a little bit slower, but it has really good toxin application because it's not just like one hit. It's like hit, 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 hit as you're sweeping across them. So it can be very good, but it's more situational. Toxin Bubbles is set and forget. The other stuff like Poison Corrosion and Poison Bubbles, not a big fan of those. Venomous Discharge does okay. Only okay. The early venomous stuff is kind of weak, so much so that you might just want to stick with Toxin Weapon, which will do a pretty solid job. Moving on from there though, Elemental Plague. I am all about Elemental Plague and the debuffs that Metal brings to the table. Now, I know a lot of people play Metal and they look at stuff, but honestly, we have a lot of this already. Spirit Disruption, we're going to have access. We have Spirit Vulnerability, which might be the same as Disruption, I don't know. But, you know, stuff like Repression Crush, Life Wither, we can already apply this debuff through other means. Where's it at? There's like Calamity Bolts, we can apply that debuff through other means. So while we do have a lot of debuffs here, personally, I think Elemental Plague and applying other elements is a better playstyle. Speaking of other elements, we already have water and earth. So Frozen Spear Trap. Frozen Spear Trap has a very high ice application rate. You don't have to use this. Keep in mind, we have a solid amount here. You could use Unrelenting Frost. You could use, where's my baby at here? Frozen Malice if you wanted. But Frozen Spear Trap tends to have a very high application, which is why I use it. If you're fighting against multiple targets, I do think Frozen Malice is better because of the AoE. Otherwise, Frozen Spear Trap is a pretty safe bet, just because, like I said, high application of ice. Posing Slab, similar to the Earth build, this is going to do really well. This is going to, anything that's not resistant to Earth, this plus Elemental Plague, you'll get a single application. So there were a couple times in that fight there where one Frozen Spear Trap procced ice, one Imposing Slab proc stone, and that's exactly why I'm using these two particular moves. Taking a look at the gear, and by extension, our Divine Beast, of course, we have Teng Shi. Now, I've used Teng Shi on a couple of these builds, and this is honestly the one where it fits the best. A couple things here. Increased damage to enemies with negative effects. That's just popping off. Status effect accumulation is fantastic. Wizardry spell damage is fantastic. And we have power drop application. Now, before we go into all the gear, I want to talk about debuffs, because we have a lot of debuffs on deck, and we have it for a reason. So we have power drop when a wizardry spell hits. We also have spirit vulnerability on enemy when a wizardry spell hits. And then over here, we have slow being applied to an enemy when we defect a critical blow. And then lastly, over here, we have damage amplification on enemy upon a martial art. Now, the reason that we are trying to apply so much to the enemy as opposed to ourselves is there is a unique benefit of Venom and Toxic in that when it's applied to an enemy, the debuffs on that target will not fall as long as Toxic is in effect. And so the idea here is with smart play, we're going to have ice, we're going to have lightning, we're going to have stone, we're going to have damage amp, we're going to have spirit vulnerability, we're going to have slow, and we're going to have power drop, all persisting on a target the entirety of a fight. Ideal scenario, that is how this build works. You are just debilitating the shit out of whatever you're fighting. Going more in-depth into the gear, like I said, lightning enchant, we're going to be running that on the Gating Blade along with spirit gain and damage amp from enemy upon martial arts. If you want, you could put the take the lightning enchant and put it on over here. I actually really like lightning enchant on staffs, but I'm a big fan of the Gating Blade as well. We actually get a little bit more damage on here, so it may be worthwhile using. Keep in mind, you're going to get the set bonus whether or not you're using this. But, you know, this sort of grew on me because you're going to be using this for a while until this build gets going, because it's the first real solid ability, or the first solid metal-focused weapon that you're probably going to find. Once you get access to Night Owl Cane from the Libation or Gao set, this is more of a late game one. This is very solid, of course, A scaling in metal and A minus over there in water. And Nightbird Spin is pretty fun. You chuck on out the staff and it actually pops shots quite a few enemies. Of course, Tiger Hunting Bow, take advantage of the metal bonus to get some real damage there on our ranged. As for the gear, across the board, we're going to be going Wizardry spell damage, Wizardry spell spirit consumption, and negative effect duration on enemies. Besides that, the legs and the chest, we're going to go Toxin Attack Power, and then we're going to go Spirit Vulnerability and Slow, as I mentioned, taking a more deflect or a debuff-oriented playstyle. As for accessories, it's really whatever you can get your hands on. I'm not going to be too picky here. You know, we can't re-roll them yet, so it's kind of like, hey, like I think I've used the same hairpin in like every build pretty much. But yeah, that's going to be it. It's a very straightforward build. Like I said, one of the big benefits of this is just how well you can lock down targets. You're really able to take stuff and kind of make it so that it can't fight back. Fate of the Entertainer, I'm trying to remember. This one's actually pretty long. I don't think we want to do all that. Let's do Japanese Exile. I have it checked already, but I don't think I've done this in one of the build videos, so we can do this one here. Another nice thing about this is it's very set and forget in terms of the toxin. Like, if you're fighting something that's not resistant to toxin, you literally just throw that out. You throw toxin out, and that's it. You throw it out, it does damage, stuff dies. You don't even have to, like, think about it. Like, just boop. And anything that's caught in that is pretty much just going to get beat down. Is everything up there fighting Zhao Yun? I think so. Oh man, the double. Well, that's gonna take care of you. That's probably gonna take care of you. I'm really terrible at dodging these right now, so let me just hit you with this instead. Okay, poison killed him. Fighting some resisties over here, man. Love the range on that thing. It's a deceptively long range. Alright, it's not you casting. Somebody else has to be casting this. Zhao Yun's just up there fighting this dude. Huh. Alright, let me come over there and kind of... I don't really like fighting big dudes like this in small spaces, but... Those fights are usually okay. It's just that's setting yourself up for failure. Like, oh, let me fight this thing that's going to flip and do all sorts of annoying attacks on this small platform where it has enough room to flip and do a bunch of annoying attacks. Remember, I think this is double tigers. Statuses. And you can see, look at all those statuses up on this guy. And those they're not removing at all. Because as long as he is inflicted with that poison, all those statuses maintain. So every time we do a new thing, We're getting another status application up on that target. Now there is a spell that, well, I'll warp and then I'll talk about it. I want to talk a little bit about Molten Calamity Thorn. Oh no, I did not mean to do the same battlefield. We're gonna warp on over to our monkey. Our monkey is actually like a beautiful test bed for this, to see how we can lock down something with statuses and how just helpless it really becomes. But let me do this real fast. So, talking about spells. Thorn Shot, you think it's going to be great because it's like snare, but as soon as something walks out of it, that effect leaves. So I'm not a giant fan of it. I just don't think it's as good as it could be. And Molten Calamity Thorn, this has really high damage potential. You know, we're removing 8 or 9 asphyxes on this. We're doing massive amounts of damage. The problem, though, not necessarily a problem, but there is a whole build designed around that we can get access to in New Game Plus. Like, so in New Game Plus, instead of having armor sets from specific NPCs, like we have the Sun Jian set on right now, you have graces, and the idea is a piece of armor is just randomly going to roll with a set attached to it, and one of those sets has like perfect synergy with Molten Calamity Thorn because it increases your damage by like 10% for every debuff on an enemy, up to like 8 or something. But so the point is, it's silly to do a build right now based around debuffs when there's literally an armor set designed for that build. And so this is going to be a good demonstration. So boom, that's on. Boom, that's on. We'll throw this out. That might take 1 or 2. Or I'll just whiff. That's okay. Now, I want you to notice where his ice is at. And boom, look at that. We get that on, and notice how instantly all of those durations got set to full. And this is what makes Toxin such an insanely strong build, is as long as the enemy is afflicted by Toxin, we are able to maintain all of those status effects on them. And obviously, if the effects start falling off, we're gonna have to, you know, reapply Toxin quickly, which we can do. But like, really, we don't even have to fight back. We can just kind of chill here and get the critical deflect here and there. And this thing just can't do anything now. So now Toxin falls off, and we can just, you know, get off our snare again. And as long as we apply it before, boom, everything back to full duration. And look at his spirit bar. That's the craziest thing about this to me. Is like, we don't even have to fight. We literally just have to exist. And we're gonna be able to pin something down. And what's really nice about this particular element spread is we have a lot of stuff that is impacting spirit over and over and over again. So real fast, just to go into the debuffs. I mean, a lot of this, I feel like if you've made it this far into the game, you kind of understand these effects, but, you know, a little refresher course doesn't hurt anybody. Where's it at? Here. So, here's the thing. Shock is going to gradually decrease spirit. So the spirit's going to be going down no matter what. On heaviness, this is going to increase the spirit damage received. I mean, I'm not even worried about like decreases the amount. No, increase the spirit damage received along with gradually decreasing the spirit. Over on here, this is going to prevent any chance of spirit recovery. And then on top of all that, poison is going to gradually decrease health and spirit. So the only thing we're missing here is fire, which decreases health, but we're not really worried about that. Instead, we are sitting here just debilitating the bejesus out of the target spirit bar to the point where it's not able to really fight back. And like, as you saw, the spirit bar just ticked down. We didn't have to do anything. We just existed. And this thing's spirit bar was like, do. So that is the metal build. Like I said, very, very strong. It takes a little bit of time for metal to really get going. But once it does, it definitely puts out some serious damage there. So either way, that is going to wrap things up for me. As for New Game Plus oriented builds, I know I'm going to get around to them, but things are just super busy right now. You know, I had wanted to have these builds out like weeks ago, and then it was like walkthrough and baby and everything just got away from me. So, you know, maybe it's too late to even put them out, but whatever. At least I know I have one of each element out for people that come to Wo Long in the future. So thanks for tuning on in. Appreciate the support as always, and I will catch you guys next time with something else.